Welcome to the MLB Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guys Mo Nawara in the Midwest and Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we are looking at a Monday slate here with lots to choose from, plenty to go through in this slate here tonight. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We are bringing you each and every one of these night games that we can. We are skipping out on those day games so we can make sure we get these videos to you guys out in time. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Make sure you're checking out all the great written content that Nate, Mo, and the gang have all summer long leading into this fall, as well as we do gear up for football as well. And we also want you to head there to thelines.com and use that odds checker tool that we have for you. Make sure you're shopping those lines to the best of your ability throughout this MLB season. And as always, if you do still need a FanDuel or a DraftKings account, head to ftpicks.com or dkpicks.com. Find those listings in your area, such as what we've got. Kicking things off with the evening time games that we have here. The Phillies and Syndergaard in Cincinnati against Mike Minor and the Reds, minus 175 for the Phils. Joe Musgrove and the Pods in Miami taking on Sandy Alcantara. Good pitching matchup there, minus 140 for the Pods on the road. The Tigers and Brian Garcia in Cleveland taking on Xavier Curry, and those Guardians minus 200 for the Guardians at home. Marcus Stroman and Chicago. The Cubs are in Washington taking on Josiah Gray, minus 140 for the visiting Cubs. Jalen Beeks and the Tampa Bay Rays are in New York taking on the Yankees, and Garrett Cole minus 245 for the Yanks at home. Kyle Bradish and the Orioles are in Toronto taking on Yusei Kikuchi, minus 155 for the Jays at home. Carlos Carrasco and those Mets are in Atlanta taking on Spencer Strider, minus 155 for Strider and the Bravos at home. Chris Bubich and the Royals in Minnesota taking on Joe Ryan and the Twins, minus 190 for the Twins at home there. James Kaprielian and the A's are in Texas taking on Glenn Otto, minus 155 for the Rangers. Julio Urias and the Dodgers are in Milwaukee taking on Freddie Peralta and those Brewers, minus 165 for the Doyers, and a pretty good matchup in this one. The Astros and Jose Urquidy are in Chicago taking on Johnny Cueto and the Chi Sox, plus 110 for Chicago at home against those Astros. The Mariners and Luis Castillo are in LA taking on those Angels. Shohei Ohtani on the mound, minus 110 for both squads in this one. And finishing things off at night, we've got the Diamondbacks and Madison Bumgarner in San Francisco. I almost said Madison Bumgarner pitched for San Francisco. It was confusing for a minute. He's in San Francisco on the road as a visiting team against the Giants, and Alex Cobb minus 190 for the much better San Francisco Giants in this one. But let's kick things off with a pretty fun matchup here. As I was mentioning, that good matchup, the Dodgers and the Brewers. Kick things off for us with this one, Mo, and Urias and Freddie Peralta in that matchup.
Definitely a matchup of two teams who familiar foes from a couple postseasons ago for sure. And Julio Urias is a guy who was looking a little rough early in the season. His fastball velocity was pretty weak, sitting like 91, even 92. He really kicked it up as the season's gone on and got past his early season struggles. He's been looking tremendous lately, and overall his full season numbers are really, really strong now. He's been sitting 94 with his heater past 5 starts. That's close to where he's been the last couple of years. And yeah, since he's been kicking up his velocity, if you look at his numbers since June, 2.2 ERA, 2.73 FIP, 3.25 xFIP. I mean, and he's honestly a guy who has historically outpitched his peripherals. So when they look that good, I'm wondering if I'm honestly having him undervalued. So in this matchup, it's a great one for him. Milwaukee's putrid against lefties, 25th in WRC plus. And then the pitching matchup on the other side, Freddie Peralta, it doesn't look that good for him. And I don't know how long he's going to go. I think he's recently off the IL. The Dodgers 5th versus the fastball. I think that's really big here because Freddie Peralta, he's historically gotten so much out of his heater. He's one of the more fastball heavy starters out there, above 50%. And against right-handed sliders, the Dodgers are also really, really strong. 4th best xWOBA there. I still think this is like pretty close to a good line though. I'm seeing some mostly minus 170s. I had that as the right price. If you can get minus 165, which there was one on DraftKings as of like an hour ago or so, I think it's like maybe you can bet it if you like the Dodgers more than me here. I might be underselling how good Urias is in this matchup though. He's been so good this year, and in the past few years, just a guy who his numbers honestly don't capture how good he's been just because he's been able to outpitch his peripherals. So he's a tough guy to pin down, but It does look like a good matchup for him, and maybe not a great matchup for Peralta.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who pitches his peripherals facing a team that can't hit lefties, he doesn't give up hard contact. That definitely spells like a good bet spot to me. I mean, and with the Dodgers, you're 32-6 since July 1st. I don't know if I've seen them on better than minus 200 in a while. Certainly when they're not face anybody that's not a high quality offense, that they don't have this kind of advantage on the mound potentially. So the Brewers hitting 197 against lefties since the All-Star break brought this up when they're facing the Cardinals. Also brought up the fact that there's some bad juju since they could trade Josh Hader. They've lost 8 of 12. Yeah, I mean, Peralta, you kind of hard to figure out. He is probably better than his ERA would indicate. Actually, a better ground ball rate than last year, a lower barrel rate, but been a bit unlucky in terms of that BABIP up at 303. But now you're facing the Dodgers, they will make those bad breaks happen for you because of just how good that lineup is and how good they're running right now. I think this is a great spot to bet one of the odds out there.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be a fun game and one that will impact the standings. Our next game will not impact the standings too highly as we're going to Seattle taking on those Angels and Shohei Ohtani. Pretty fun matchup here. Minus 110 currently on DraftKings for both these teams as Luis Castillo is also having one of his better seasons on the mound. Really, you've got to give a lot of the edge outside of, some of Ohtani, obviously, maybe even a little bit of the bullpen there where these bullpens actually have pretty close in a lot of key stats, Sierra especially. Everything else is Seattle. So I do think that there's probably some value there in terms of the, even odds on both sides with a team that definitely has at least a couple of edges all around the field. So Mo, Nate, I want to hear from you first on this one. Luis Castillo and Ohtani. What are you looking at in this one?
Looking at fatigue for Shohei Ohtani, not just in the physical sense, but the mental play for a team that can't win sense. And in the half, he's looked certainly more human when he's on the mound. He's got 266 batting average against. The line drive rate jumps to 26%. Home run to fly ball rate nearly 20%. He's been walking a few more guys lately. Look at the under for the Angels offense. When you have a lineup that's not going to have Mike Trout, Anthony Rendon, it's not going to have Ohtani until he comes out of the game as a pitcher. It's not scary at all. And Luis Castillo coming off 8 dominant innings in his second for the Mariners. He's just exploding with talent. It's two guys going the opposite way in terms of how their morale should be.
Luis Castillo, I think that makes sense for the if you want to just look at a team total here. Honestly, I don't see how the Angels are going to score on Luis Castillo. He's been unreal. This game, I think it was opened with a pretty bad line. I bet the Mariners at plus yesterday. I had it as wrong team favored. They were still plus this morning, but now the market's come in pretty hard on the Mariners. I'm seeing some up to minus 115s, I think, out there now. I think that's close to the correct line. So unfortunately, probably not as much value this morning, unless you can at least find a minus 105. But as far as this matchup goes, yeah, Luis Castillo, since he went a little more fastball heavy on June 28th, he has a 1.66 ERA, 2.87 FIP, 2.99 xFIP in 7 starts. And he faced the Yankees 3 times and Atlanta once in those 7, also Tampa Bay. So definitely not the easiest slate of opponents there. It's also just the matchup for him is just so good. Even as bad as the Angels have been, that's not even fully telling the story. And they have been unbelievably bad. Worst offense in baseball, tied with the Marlins basically since Mike Trout went down. Luis Castillo, I mentioned how many fastballs he's throwing. He's throwing like 60%, even honestly more than Freddie Peralta, which is pretty crazy. And the Angels have been atrocious against all fastballs of all sorts. 29th against 4-seamers, 27th against sinkers. I think I do have Ohtani as a stronger pitcher than Castillo, but when the Angels offense is this bad, and the Mariners is going the opposite way with their lineup, they got Julio Rodriguez, Ty France, and Mitch Haniger back at the top of the lineup. That's basically, they're like pretty close to their ideal lineup, I think, here. I didn't really look to see if anybody's still missing, but I think this is like pretty much the group they want to run out there in an ideal situation. And then even when you just look at past that, like it's maybe the worst bullpen in baseball against a top 5 bullpen. So this is another spot where I've talked about this in a few times before earlier this season, but if you find the Mariners down a little bit early, it's probably a good time to bet Mariners live, just because unless Ohtani can get to the pens with like a multiple run lead, 3+ runs here. I mean, I think the Mariners are going to be very live to come back against this bullpen. And we know one thing about Ohtani too, as amazing as he is, he's not necessarily the most efficient pitcher. He's usually going 6, I think in most cases, just, throws a lot of pitches, gets a lot of strikeouts, doesn't allow a lot of balls in play. So it does run up his pitch count a little bit. So I'd be looking at the Mariners live too if they go down, because I don't see a lot of value in the current line.
For sure. Well, let's finish things off then with another team that we do have in the AL West, and the Astros. They are in Chicago taking on those White Sox. As we mentioned, Cueto and Urquidy on the mound against each other here. -134 for the for the Astros currently on the road. So kick things off for us, Mo, with this one and what you might like there. We've also got a total of 9 runs if you're interested.
More so looking at the Astros for sure. Yeah, this one is also kind of moving toward the Astros, but unlike with the Mariners, I still think there's plenty of room to play the Astros. I had them quite a bit bigger favorites than the -124 I got last night. I think you can play this up to -140 or so. Jose Urquidy and Johnny Cueto, pretty similar talent levels. I have Urquidy just a little bit better, but this one's all about the lineups for me. Kind of similar to the Mariners game. It's just a lot of injuries piling up again for the White Sox. The story of the season, basically, for this team. They just can't stay healthy, and it's not like bit players or, pitchers necessarily. It's just been their batters. It's just been brutal for them. And now it's Luis Robert. I don't know. I think he maybe could come back today, because I saw that. I guess they don't think he's going to go on the IL, so it's possible he plays actually. But Tim Anderson's definitely out. Robert, I would think, is a little more likely to be out than not. Looking at their projected lineup, I mean, I'm seeing AJ Pollock and Yohan Moncada at the top of it. That's just not what you want. Pollock is not having a good season. Moncada is having a putrid season. 277 xWOBA this year. That is about as bad as it gets. That basically, for people not familiar with the way that stat scales, that's like basically you're facing Shohei Ohtani every time out. So that's like the xWOBA he allows. So that's how Moncada's hitting so far this year. Something called Lennon Sosa has been starting with Tim Anderson out at shortstop. He has 30% K rate and 3% walk rate so far. The White Sox also stink versus the four-seam fastball. They're 26th. They don't hit righties well, even when they're healthy. It just doesn't look like a good matchup. Urquidy, another fastball-heavy starter at 54% this year, so looks like a decent spot for him. He's not like a pitcher I'm expecting to light the world on fire, but this White Sox group is pretty bad. And I also like that their bullpen is so heavily right-handed in this matchup, because the White Sox are so much stronger against lefties. But the only lefty Houston has, I think, in the pen is Will Smith. So should honestly be really, really good situation for all their pitchers today.
Yeah, and the Astros, the best bullpen in the bigs, of course. So if we are in a close game, favoring them on the road. I mean, when you look at Johnny Cueto, been able to get by veteran acumen for the most part this year, throwing 80% off speed stuff. And so some of the advanced metrics indicate he's kind of overperformed. I mean, he's got a career high 91% contact rate in the zone. And the Astros hit fastballs well. They also hit changeups well. Plus 12, the best ratings in the majors there, according to Fangraphs. So I think they'll be able to get to Cueto a little bit. And if they build a lead at best bullpen, should cover Urquidy, who was pitching really well before he gave up a few blips there, a few long balls against the Rangers. It's just a better team, similar to that Dodgers play, better team that's not a big enough favorite for us tonight.
Absolutely. And that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure you are liked and subscribed to that page. Continue to follow along with us as we are bringing you these videos each and every weekday of this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.